One thing that has been regularly on my mind since the end of RWBY Volume 9 is the Bumblebee confession scene. And like with Ruby vs. the Furious Cat, I got really caught up in one aspect of the confession, Blake and Yane's kiss. In thinking about the kiss, I also started heavily considering all the prior kisses in RWBY and how they differed. Thus, with all the kisses in RWBY now taken into consideration, I'm going to go over each by analyzing and discussing what's at play in each of them. I also want to talk about how each of these kisses are presented. My hope is to point out and or discuss aspects of these scenes that others haven't, or may not have even noticed themselves. Before I officially get started, please consider leaving a comment on the video letting me know what you think. If you like what I have to say and want to see more of what I have to offer, please consider checking out my YouTube channel. I have multiple playlists for just about every style of video on my channel. With the housekeeping out of the way, let's start this discussion off with the first kiss in RWBY, which is the surprise kiss Pyrrha gives to Jean at the end of Volume 3. It's crazy to think how sad the first kiss in RWBY is. Pyrrha kisses Jean to quiet him and lower his guard so she can more easily push him into the rocket locker in order to send Jean to safety before she goes to face Cinder alone. I consider this to be a really selfish moment for Pyrrha, but not in a negative way. If you've watched my Selfless vs. Selfish video where I primarily talk about Jean, I bring up how Pyrrha is an overtly selfless person to her own detriment. I believe that Pyrrha needed to be more selfish in order to be happy and get what she truly wants, which Jean can be a vehicle for. This moment where Pyrrha realizes that she is going to have to face Cinder is her contending with that selfless aspect of her personality. She could absolutely choose to escape with Jean and get help like she was ordered to, but the urgency of the situation combined with Professor Ozpin telling Pyrrha that the tower cannot fall makes Pyrrha decide to forgo her own wants. It's something she wants to do, but going to face Cinder could prevent her from ever being able to do so in the future should she fail to stop Cinder or at least buy enough time for help to arrive. The interesting thing to me about this moment in which Pyrrha kisses Jean is in how it is shot. Call me crazy, but it seems like they are trying to obscure the kiss. When Pyrrha goes for it, the camera is placed behind and to the side of Pyrrha, making it so we can't see Pyrrha and Jean's faces for the kiss. It cuts to a wide in which we can see the full action, but slowly orbits left of the two of them, obscuring their faces again. The kiss ends with the camera back to being partially behind Pyrrha like it was in the first shot. Looking back at the wide for a closer look, it seems like Pyrrha's head is further right of Jean's. However, it still looks like Pyrrha is kissing Jean. I think I understand why this is. Let me know if you agree. At this point in RWBY's production, even though they've made improvements to the character models and animation, they probably couldn't depict a kiss like this well enough for the camera to be any closer with both of their faces in full view. It would risk the moment being ruined due to jank, such as Pyrrha and Jean's mouths clipping into each other. So, they start off by having the camera in a spot to hide each of their faces for the start of the kiss, cut to a wide making sure Pyrrha's face is over top Jean's, while slowly rotating back to a similar angle as the first shot, thus making their faces more obscured. Finally ending with the camera back in its position for the first shot as Pyrrha moves her head away from Jean. I'm not pointing this out to say the way this has been done is a bad thing. These are just creative solutions to the potential technical limitations they may have had at the time. Like, how many of you actually thought the way this kiss was presented to be weird or off? Goes to show how the people who worked on this kiss knew what they were doing and how they could effectively accomplish and present this moment between Pyrrha and Jean. After all, the composition of these three shots also feels purposeful. First shot allows us to see Pyrrha and Jean's faces before she kisses him. The second is a wide, allowing us to see how both Pyrrha and Jean move and react while kissing. We get to see how Jean is initially stunned, but then wraps his arms around Pyrrha. The last shot only allows us to see Jean's confused face as Pyrrha moves her head away while apologizing just before pushing Jean. Up next is Blake giving Sun a kiss on the cheek before they part ways in Volume 6. Right off the bat, you can notice that the camera is a bit further away than the kiss Pyrrha gives to Jean. If the latter was shot to obscure due to potential technical problems with the character models, why are they placing the camera like this? After all, the animation and techniques RWBY have been implementing since Volume 3 has very much improved in regards to the physical interactions between characters. The reason is pure artistic intent. The camera is placed this way to complement what this moment means for Blake and Sun. All you have to do in order to understand is consider what is happening with Blake and Sun at this point. Blake and Sun are going their separate ways after 2 volumes of traveling together with Sun supporting Blake. Earlier, Sun told Blake how he goes where he is needed and that Blake doesn't need him anymore. Blake comments on how sad that sounds. But Sun reassures her by pointing out how Blake is also going to be where she needs to be. Blake then lets Sun know how grateful she is to him. So the purpose of the camera here is to reinforce the emotions of this moment between Blake and Sun. This is the last shot we get with just the 2 of them. It's a goodbye, but one that is content with gratitude, hopeful they will cross paths again. The music here is also light in tone and using the leitmotif of like morning follows night, further emphasizing these feelings. That brings us to the kiss for Ren and Nora in Volume 7. Like with Pyrrha, Nora grabs and surprise kisses Ren. Unlike Pyrrha, the reason Nora does this to Ren is because of how distant Ren has been. Ren and Nora are at odds going into this scene after some time arguing and projecting their relationship issues onto Blake and Yang. Nora asks what's going on and why Ren won't talk to her. Ren doesn't even look at her when responding, stating how he has never been good at talking. So, Nora says screw talking and decides to communicate with actions by kissing them. Okay, before talking about the actual kiss, I gotta gush about this shot of Nora reacting to that statement from Ren. Purely because of how the camera is framing Ren. The distance between Ren and Nora has already been a highlight leading up to this moment. With Ren's eyes cut off by the top of the frame here, it makes Ren look and feel even more distant from Nora than before. I can tell this is the intention because of how the camera was placed similarly to start off this part of their conversation, as Ren's face is fully in view of the camera. So, this is how Ren is framed when Nora asks what's wrong, and after Ren continues to act distant, Ren is framed like this. This framing helps us understand and empathize with how Nora is feeling in this moment. Now, let's talk about the camera and presentation for the actual kiss. The camera is most definitely closer than the previous 2 and does a 180-degree orbit around Ren and Nora as the background becomes more out of focus and blurred over time. We are given a much clearer view of their faces compared to Pyrrha and Jean's kiss. The background blurring and becoming more out of focus communicates how much Ren and Nora are ignoring their surroundings and getting caught up in their kiss. Kind of like they are forgetting where they are or what's going on around them, allowing them to just focus on each other. Even though the shot ends with Ren and Nora's mouths obscured by Nora's arm, I don't believe this was done to hide anything. I believe this was done so that we can get a good look at each of their faces for this kiss, with Nora's arm unfortunately needing to be so high for her to wrap her arms around Ren's head. Height difference, you know? So at the start of this shot, we can clearly see Ren's face and how his expression changes as the kiss goes on. However, we can't really see all of Nora's face, just her nose and mouth. We get to see the upper part of Nora's face when the camera finishes rotating around them. To make it more clear what I believe the creative intentions are, the shot starts with Ren as the focus and ends with Nora as the focus. That finally brings me to Blake and Yang's kiss in Volume 9 that comes right after they confess their love for each other. This is a scene in which you can tell the Kyuubi put in a lot of effort to make this moment between Blake and Yang as good and as special as it can be. From the performances, animation, and visuals, everything is top notch. What I find the most impressive is how the environment is used. As Blake and Yang work out their situation, the environment changes to reflect their progress. When Blake and Yang first come to, they find themselves separated, standing on 2 suspension bridges with a platform between them amidst thick clouds and strong wind. This reflects the shocking and confusing situation Blake and Yang have found themselves in. Blake and Yang yell out to each other to make sure the other is okay. Blake states how she would feel better being together on the platform with Yang, which causes a board to appear before Blake. While trying to figure out why that happened, Yang gives Blake an honest compliment that causes a board to be added to Yang's bridge. As they explore this discovery, they come to understand that the planks get added to their respective bridges by speaking about their thoughts and feelings towards one another. With these revelations, the wind begins to weaken and the clouds start to move more calmly. As a result, the suspension bridges they are on sway much less, paralleling the stability Blake and Yane have now found. As Blake and Yane start to realize something about themselves, the wind calms even further as the clouds dissipate. The clouds clearing and the revealed sun coming over the horizon symbolize how this realization has made something clear to them. However, Yane gets self-conscious about her feelings and thus holds back. Because of this, the two bridges they are on are pushed away from the platform, an indication as to how Yane's withholding of her feelings has set them both back. Despite this setback, Blake quickly realizes what happened and why. Because Blake realized this about Yane without Yane saying anything, Blake and Yane became able to hear each other's thoughts, showing how strong their understanding of each other has become. And once Blake and Yane announce their love for each other, they find themselves standing on the platform directly in front of each other, revealing the platform to be a representation of an ultimate truth between them. With that, we finally get to the kiss. You know at this point that I'm gonna talk about the camera first here. The camera starts behind Blake, with Yane as the focus of the shot. The camera here orbits right of Blake. The shot then reverses behind Yane to focus on Blake and orbits left. The camera following the movement of these two shots gets placed where the two prior motions would meet to frame up Blake and Yane coming together for their kiss. To make it more clear, the cinematography is aligned with the emotions and actions Blake and Yane are undergoing. A similar approach was done with this moment from Volume 8, in which Oscar and Oz discuss what to do while confined as they give their own perspectives before coming to an agreement. For this shot framing the actual kiss, the camera is obviously much closer than any of the previous kissing scenes covered. Not only that, the camera is also not moving. What this tells me is that the crewbie wants you to be able to see this moment as clearly as possible with no distractions. The absolute Chad-like confidence crewbie is strutting in with. They want you to be able to see both Blake's and Yane's faces as they go in for the kiss. This moment ends with the camera being pulled back to hold for a moment before panning up and away from Blake and Yane, almost like it is saying we should give them some space and leave them alone now. The aspect about Blake and Yane's kiss that I want to highlight is Yane's eyes. Notice how her eyes move and compare that to Blake's. Blake's eyes stay more steady, while Yane's wavers for a moment by looking down a bit and then back up to Blake's eyes. I feel this communicates a bit of hesitation from Yane when going in for the kiss, which would make sense considering Yane's reactions and behavior throughout the scene. When Yane gestured confidently to Blake after Blake surmised that they need to express the things they've never said to each other, what Blake says takes Yane off guard. Then you have Yane withholding her feelings due to becoming self-conscious about them. Yane reveals her hesitation to Blake when they can hear each other's thoughts by Yane expressing how saying what she feels is like taking a step off a cliff. Blake then tells Yane to just say it, and Yane has to take a breath to calm herself in order to do so. Not only that, Yane says, "I think," once again showing that hesitation to commit to her own feelings. It's just really funny to consider how Yane has been more of an extrovert in regards to how she expresses herself, while Blake has been more of an introvert. Speaking of, on the flip side, you have Blake, who is now so confident in herself that she can say what she thinks and feels without any hesitation. What makes Blake able to be so confident in her own feelings is due to the experiences Blake has had with relationships and her own growth over the course of RWBY, allowing Blake to be more open and honest. In comparison, Yane has never been in a relationship with someone and also appears to avoid talking about things she is uncomfortable with. This behavior from Yane can be seen in Volume 5 when talking about Blake, and how she didn't tell everyone about Raven, her mother who left her once again, being the Spring Maiden. I feel this avoidance of sensitive topics from Yane is what informs Yane's behavior in this scene. Let me know if you agree. And that does it. When it comes to these kisses in RWBY, I found it cool to discover how some kisses were similarly done, but had different motivations leading into them, as I mentioned with Kira and Nora's surprise kisses to Jean and Ren. I know my overviews were not all-encompassing, but these were the aspects of the kissing scenes in RWBY that I wanted to talk about. I bet some people wished I talked about the music more and the sapphic symbolism in the Bumblebee confession. Another thing I noticed but didn't talk about are the stars around Blake and Yang during the kiss. They are hard to see, and the white lilies blooming will grab your attention more than these stars will. I just couldn't really determine what these stars signify regarding Blake and Yang. Like, maybe their love is just so dazzling that these stars appear. Of the relationships covered that are still ongoing, the one I am most interested seeing progress is Renora. Ren and Nora had a pretty significant shakeup to their relationship in volumes 7 and 8, with Nora wanting to find herself before she recommits to a relationship with Ren. Of course, I'm also interested in how Blake and Yang are going to be now that they are officially in a relationship. I expect Blake to be a major support for Yang when it comes to Raven. However, I do also want Blake to go through her own challenges. I hope you enjoyed watching me discuss the kissing scenes in RWBY. Please let me know if there were any aspects about these kissing scenes that you felt I left out or are worth exploring further. If you want to see me discuss the evolution of another aspect in RWBY, please check out my video covering RWBY vs. the Furious Cat and the evolution of shot, reverse shot in RWBY fight scenes.